Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered.
Hello, and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, as you might have heard in our intro, and with me I have my expert panel as usual, Marshall, Daniel, and Adam. How are you guys?
We're good.
Good.
We're
Good.
Good.
Awesome. So let's get to our main story now. Today we're talking about social justice.
Dun dun dun.
Because this week is Social Justice Week at Ryerson. There were many events held and still to come regarding all things SJW, including feminism, Black Lives Matter, free education, and much more. But what is social justice? Well, social justice means justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privilege as defined, or privileges within a society. The Oxford Dictionary's definition itself seems totally reasonable and the right thing to do, morally. But what it's become is a total catastrophe. I'm so speechless that we just have to go straight to the questions. Mm-hmm. So, first question to you guys, and we're going back to debate style for this episode. Mm-hmm. So first question, what is social justice to you, and what's right or wrong about it?
Well, I'd say, as you said, the definition of it, it is good. They do have good intentions, and often, I like where their heart's at. However, the way social justice in contemporary society is often carried out is based on false narratives, places the blame on the wrong people, on the wrong things. And like you said, it's a total catastrophe a lot of the time, and it's just a lot of misguided people who are trying their best to help, but just not doing a good job of it.
For me, social justice, like I get it. I get the week it needs to be held. I agree with the week. I support it. I support some of the events that go on, some of the keynote speakers that come to speak. But the problem, and as a member of the left, I can identify with this problem. The problem that the left wing has is that we're so frustrated, and right wingers and center people feel this as well. But I feel like with the left, you kind of feel it a little more. But maybe that's just my bias. But there's so much passion and so much frustration in how we come about all these injustices in society that we kind of go away from the main point. We believe in inequality, but we make fun of conservatives. If there's, like, for example, if there's a certain minority or a certain group of people that don't fit our narrative, they're immediately excluded.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Yeah.
There
makes
was
sense.
a pro-life protest yesterday on Gould Street, and a pro-choice counter-protest, and abortion is a contentious issue, and it seems to really bring out the worst in people, unfortunately, because on both sides, more so I found on the pro-choice side, there was just so much aggressiveness, hostility. I don't like to consider myself either pro-life or pro-choice. I don't like to associate with either camp. I'm not a fan of either camp particularly. But I saw a lot of hostility, especially from the pro-choice people. I just wanted to open up a conversation, talk to these people, see what they were going for on both sides. The pro-life people, I found that they were very kind. They were a bit in my face, but they were kindly in my face, if that makes sense. The pro-choice people, as soon as I went up and spoke to them, they told me I was committing a microaggression. They told me I was mansplaining to them. I had
Just all of these general terms that they've already
all
came up with.
these buzzwords that the social justice warriors love to use. And just like Adam was saying, I was asking them kind of what their goal was, and they started just shaming these pro-life people for being Christian, and started making gross generalizations about these people, saying, yeah, no, they're not pro-life, they're only pro-birth, they don't volunteer, they don't do anything for their community except protest. Like, you know, it's really unfair to say. And I just think that when you don't fit into the higher rungs on the victim ladder, you become a victim in a lot of ways of these social justice warriors, their fury.
Mm-hmm. Back to your question, you were asking exactly what exactly is social justice, or what we think about it.
Yeah. What you guys what's right and what's wrong with it?
Well, social justice is a very important. I think it's probably one of the most important issues that's going to come from our generation for the next maybe 15 years, even more in the future. But the problem with it would be that there's a very, I wouldn't say radical, but I would say it's too confrontational in terms of finding a solution for any type of issues like that. And just example, just how Marshall was talking about the whole pro-life versus pro-choice. I went to the March for Life, I think this was years ago, I think when I was still in elementary school at the time. And I went because I was went to a Roman Catholic school. I was raised Roman Catholic, but now I don't I guess you could say I lost my faith. But when I went there, I was like, oh yeah, every single child should be born, everyone has the right to live and stuff, all these babies. And then I think the problem with it is, if you want the way people get their point across, they're too graphic and they're way too harsh and they're way too problematic when they do it. So an example, when people who are against pro-life, they start showing these pictures of all these aborted babies that are not even the size of a penny. And literally there's little kids walking in the same march and they're seeing these very, very graphic pictures. No child should be seeing that at that age. I shouldn't have seen that when I was 12, 13 years old. That's really disgusting, first of all, but it does open the conversation. But it just, yeah, and I remember when I went, I would just start screaming at somebody, but I didn't even understand what I was talking about at the time. So those type of issues, I feel like as soon as you become part of that stuff, you need to be very informed and stuff about it. I feel like most of the people that are a part of it, they aren't as informed. They're not informed about what they're talking about. And in another example, with the U of T protests against Professor Peterson, there was one video where somebody said that one of the SJWs, we can just call him that for now, watched all of Dr. Peterson's videos, and he has over 500 hours of content, and it's there's no way you can get informed of the issue. There's no way you can be that informed about the issue, and there's always going to be a type of bias and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
And I mean, I think one of the biggest causes of the issues with all the social justice, it comes from the obsession with being a victim, with creating victim narratives, with making victims out of people.
Professional victimhood.
Exactly. And now one thing I've noticed, and this is just one of my observations, and I might be completely in the wrong here, is the terms that they use for certain groups. So, not too long ago, you would refer to the gay community as the gay community, and then it turned into the LGBT community, then the LGBTQ, and then LGBTQA, LGBTQAI. And so yesterday, I was standing about 2.5 feet away from this guy, and he told me that as a straight person, I was
as a white cis male. Is that how they describe it?
He said as a hetero person, I was threatening him and I'm going to read you what he referred to himself as.
Oh, this is all in writing?
I looked it up. I looked it up later so I could find out exactly what he referred to himself as. He referred to himself as an LGBTQQIAA person. And so I'm just thinking, I feel like they add these
you could remember all of them.
Keyboard.
It's like
just write QWERTY like the keyboard.
I understand adding the Q.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I feel like when you are trying to add all these things, you're just trying to prop yourself up further on the victim ladder.
It's just kind of not too inclusive,
it's
but
gratuitous.
it's a given that they're all within that group. And when you when you're specifying them within that group, you're making them victims, as you said, and you're singling them out instead of just calling it, an entire group. Like when, for example, this is just how I see it. When you think of Jewish people, you don't just start naming, okay, there's Ashkenazi Jews, there's Sephardic Jews, and then there's these types of Jews, Ethiopian Jews, all that. So you don't start like naming them out.
The same thing could be said for
Jews.
like Catholicism and for Catholics and for Muslim people. Like people just assume that Islam is just everybody follows the exact same religion, but there's Sunni Muslims, there's Shia, exactly. So there's different types of
Muslims,
like
Ahmadi
people.
Muslims, Baha'i. Well, Baha'is are Muslims. Sorry. Okay. Look. Even the gay, I've been to the gay pride parade every year since I was about 13.
I went last year. It was pretty cool.
I love the gay
It's
pride
amazing.
parade.
It's a good vibe.
So many
I've done the last 2
colors,
years as well.
condoms flying everywhere.
That's me. I work for Trojan.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you threw some condoms at me.
Friendship is magic.
The politicians come. It's a good time. Downtown's closed. You get to walk on the streets. Anyway, look, I have friends that identify as pansexual and asexual, and they don't get pins or stickers at the gay pride parade. There's even a faction of Muslims that are gay, and they don't get identified at the pride parade. A lot of black people at the pride parade don't get identified. Even the gay pride parade itself is very inclusive to white gays. And I realized that after I sort of got educated in the fact that there is multiculturalism in people, there's multiculturalism in gays. And it's really hard for minorities to have the struggle of being a minority and the struggle of being gay. And what a lot of white gays do is they sort of say, pick one. If you wanna
Pick one struggle, you mean?
Pick one struggle, because like there are some gays that will talk about Islamophobia, and there will be some gays that will talk about homophobia,
Right.
and the white gays will say Muslims are against gays, and then they were like, well, I'm gay and I'm a Muslim, what now? And they're like, well, we don't know about all that, and then they kind of move on.
They feel like it's contradicting what they believe or something
and
like that.
that ties into the victim ladder.
Yeah,
people
if you
just
do
want to be
not
more of a
fit
victim.
the narrative, you are not part of us. You are either us. It's us or them.
And that's certainly the reason why somebody like Milo Yiannopoulos is so controversial, because he's a gay Catholic conservative, and that doesn't align with the
Also, Jewish convert to Catholic.
Oh, really?
Jewish convert.
Yeah, born Jewish.
Okay.
Oh,
Converted
well,
to
he keeps saying
Catholicism.
he's Jewish, so
Yeah.
he's like, whatever. Point is, he's conservative, and he's like, anti-regressive left, and that's
He's
why
the most fabulous conservative on the planet. That's what he's called himself?
exactly. And that's why he gets so much, flack in the media, and people hate him and call him the alt-right, although some of his views and ideas align with the alt-right, he identifies as just conservative Catholic, right?
Yeah.
But
But
so
see, it's such a general and broad term. Just saying just conservative, right?
Yeah.
So like people are gonna paint the whole Conservative Party of Canada to the same
homophobes.
thing that Milo is saying, but
Yeah.
it's not even the same thing at all. What
it's
they're
very
saying.
different. There's different types of conservative. Like
Absolutely.
there's alt-right, there's regular conservative, there's classic conservative,
Paleo
everything you want.
conservative.
You know. But again, see, even with conservatism, you don't start talking about that. You don't say there's a classic conservative view, there's this, that.
Yeah.
There are some.
Well, it's just like with Spanish people too. Like people are gonna associate. All Spanish people are just automatically Mexican.
Yeah.
And so it's like, everybody's like, "Oh, where are you from?" "Oh, like I'm from here." Like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, I'm from Canada." I was like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, I was born here."
Where are you
Yeah.
from?
When it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what,
I
it's
hate
like,
that
what's
question.
your
From,
ethnicity? Like
Yeah.
ethnicity, and I'm like, oh, like my parents are from Guatemala. It's like, oh, what part of Mexico is that?
Yeah.
Is that East Mexico or was it like, no, it's South Mexico.
Even
like the rest of the other countries.
Even saying
like-
I'm from the Middle East, they're like, "Oh, Saudi Arabia is a really bad place."
Like,
Saudi
that's not even
Arabia
the
is not
same
all
part.
of the Middle East.
And I've always hated that question. What's your background? And whenever
I ask it though, but just because I want to know.
and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
absolutely times when it's appropriate to ask it. I mean,
Nor
there's
would I
nothing
really
wrong.
care.
There's nothing wrong with the question in of itself, but just I find the way people ask it and why they ask it. I like to play this game. I don't go to clubs much anymore, but I used to go to clubs here and there.
You're no longer hip with the youth of today, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, the story is one of the reasons I don't go to clubs. I like to play this game called the What's Your Background game, where I count how many big, like, frat boy-looking dudes wearing muscle shirts to the club will go up to girls and go, first thing they say, don't even greet the girl, they'll say, "So, what's your background?"
What?
"Oh, you're Italian too? No way, I'm Italian." "Oh, yo, you're from the Middle East? So exotic."
Yeah. I thought the question was, yo, who do you know here?
Yeah, okay,
Who do you know
yeah,
here?
for sure, that too. That one bothers me less though.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, should we?
Yeah. So
Go
okay.
back
So
then,
we'll. No, but I love the discussion. We've been going at this one question for 15 minutes. At this rate, we could have a show for like 3 hours, but we can't. Anyway, so on Wednesday there was a National Day of Action to get free education in Ontario.
Ooh, fight the fees.
Yeah, fight the fees. So, of course, it is a fact that Ontario is paying the highest tuition fees in the country. And my friend Calvin Baklar did the math and realized that while minimum wage is about $11.25 or $11.40, depending on what you think, we're paying approximately $20 an hour for school. So what do you guys think of that? Like, what should be done about these tuition fees? Is free education possible, or is that leading to a socialist society, or is it exactly what we need? What's your take?
So for me, I really don't like socialism. I don't like anything about socialism whatsoever.
I'm offended. I'm very
Are you
offended.
triggered?
I'm triggered.
If we were to have one aspect of socialism, just one, I had to choose one, it would be free education.
It's a good thing. Like, yeah.
In
However,
theory.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's
Okay, but
only
communism is good
if I
in
had
theory.
to choose
Exactly.
one.
So
And here's the thing, I find the biggest, and like I said about the SJWs, and not that all of these people pushing for free education are SJWs, but I find a lot of the times they are. Great intentions, they want university and college to be free for everybody, to help out the people who are economically not doing so well, so they can get their education and get a career out of it. The narrative that causes this is that you have to go to university. You don't have to go to university. I mean, it's one of many options. And I mean, the reason they call it a liberal arts school, they don't call it so much here in Canada, but in the States, like a school like Ryerson, a school like any of our schools in Ontario would be called a liberal arts school, except for maybe UOIT that focuses on just technology. A liberal arts school comes from the term, free skills, liberal free arts skills. It's skills of the free man, skills of the rich man. And I mean, that sounds terrible, but, sometimes if you can't, you can't keep pushing the narrative that you have to go to university. It's not something that you have to do. And if you're not in a situation where you can go to university, it's not the end of the world. There's so many other options.
Do you want to go? Or?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. All right.
We gotta hear it from the socialists.
All right. I'm, the embodiment of Karl Marx. I get it. Whatever. Anyway, I have problems of myself. I have problems myself with free tuition. Free tuition has worked in other places. It has worked in Argentina.
Argentina. Sorry, I'm just playing.
I have family in Argentina. They're all very well educated. They all came to Canada. They got good jobs because Canada recognizes Argentinian education. It works in Argentina. I cannot think of any other examples. But anyway, the problem that I have with Canada is that I do not think it can work here. If we cannot build a subway in Toronto, and I get that, education is controlled provincially, and if I'm going to go provincial, let's say we cannot extend the GO line. If we cannot fund public transit, we cannot transition to free education. As a concept, and everybody says this about communism, on paper it can work, but as a concept, free education will not work in Ontario. Another thing, I have a problem with the way the education system is set up right now.
By that you mean like the whole education system as a whole,
How
like
much
university.
we pay for it.
Okay.
How much we pay for it.
Okay. So we're only on the topic of post-secondary.
Because if we're going to talk about fight the fees, what are fees? We're paying, right?
Yeah, tuition.
It's a fact, we're paying. But if you want to break down tuition, you can actually go on RAMS for Ryerson students. You can go on RAMS and you can look at your tuition breakdown and see every dollar of what you're paying goes for. And starting this year, art students are now paying $60 for the Ryerson Art Society. I feel nothing in terms of representation by the Ryerson Art Society. I don't feel any change. I don't feel anything. And maybe it's just because the first year.
You can make the same argument for the RSU as well.
Yeah, the RSU. The RSU is completely mismanaged. I'm very proud to say that out loud. $250,000 for Drake, $1,300 surplus.
$7 million missing.
Yeah, just missing, disappear. They're gone. They're gone. Like Clinton's emails. They're gone.
I knew it.
I know it. Everybody knows it. And
We need at least one Trump quote every show.
Honestly, for the rest of the rest of the year.
You know, and it really upsets me because you know, I'm very grateful that my parents can pay my education. I'm not on OSAP. Maybe I feel less connected
Yep.
to where my money is going, and it's the harsh truth. But if you are not producing the money that you're paying for education, you don't feel, you know, that passionately about where every dollar of your tuition is going. But it upsets me because I'm paying for this and I don't feel as if though I'm reaping the benefits. So if we're going to talk about fees, then that's a big problem in terms of where our money goes and how much we have connection to it.
And I do want to mention Austin Blazis. One of you knows them?
Oh yeah, one of my buddies, Austin.
So he
brother.
commented he commented Ontario is already $300 billion in debt. How would we even fund free education?
Exactly.
LMAO. So yeah, it's true.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Under the right circumstances, you can feasibly do free education, sure. It works in Germany because Germany is a very, very united country.
Apparently, there's free education just for Canadian students now.
I didn't
Something
know
like
that.
that.
But
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. It's a specific university.
I actually just pulled it up in terms of the countries that offer free education. We have Norway, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Finland. Yeah, that's it. And they say this is up until recently they start charging tuition. And I hear saying in Germany that a couple universities they're only charging 500 euros per semester.
Now Ireland, is that not on the list?
It's not on the list here. I don't know. It doesn't specifically say.
There might be some sort
Obviously
of
different information, different websites,
right? There is at least opportunities for free education in Ireland. Maybe it's not for everybody. I'm not exactly sure, but you know, Ireland's one place where it doesn't work. The schools are not good in Ireland. Their medical schools are not nearly equivalent to our medical schools even.
But they still have recognition though?
Depends.
Depends on the
we
subject.
know about the potatoes. I think that's good enough.
Irish potatoes.
My
And
favorite.
when you
Don't be disrespectful. I love potatoes. My favorite.
sorry.
I
Oh,
love potatoes. What's wrong with
Yeah, I know.
potatoes?
I'm just playing.
Can change this
when you
whole
look
thing to
at
potatoes.
like the best schools in the world, they're all completely privately funded.
Berkeley,
schools.
Harvard, Stanford,
Ivy League
USC.
schools, Brown,
Yeah, the schools in the U.S. and like in New England mostly, or like even
Boston.
people don't. I mean, people really
Scared.
leave out the
Oranges.
schools that are in the South. They really underestimate the schools in the South, like Talladega Tech and
Any State
Emory
University,
Emory University.
Blue Mountain State.
DeVry University.
Those are the best
Trump
universities in the
University.
world. But
That's a
then
good point.
you look at a lot of the publicly funded universities, Arizona State University. Like
Just saying it sounds funny.
I mean, I don't particularly trust the public sector for something as important as education, especially when universities, colleges are for so much more than just education.
Yeah.
They're kind of like a nurturing ground for you to grow and learn in new
As a
environments.
person,
And that's also another thing I wanted to mention. Is it at this point a place to learn, or is it a place to have a safe space and keep your feelings intact?
Well, it
Depends.
That's going like deep into the free
Yeah.
speech Peterson
Yeah.
thing too, right?
That's the whole thing with private versus public. If you've got a private university and it's not publicly funded at all, and you want to have safe spaces, you want to have all that stuff, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't care. My tax money's not paying for it. What I was about to say is there's so many ideological aspects to what goes on at a university, and I don't want my tax money going towards ideological things. I don't want my tax money hiring Black Lives Matter to come. I don't want my tax money hiring even something I agree with. If like the Conservative Libertarian Union of Toronto came to speak at our school, I wouldn't want my tax money paying for that because it's ideological and it's not something that everybody can get
So
behind.
universities in itself should be like nonpartisan then, right?
Bipartisan, tripartisan, polypartisan.
Okay. What I meant is like nobody should be like imposing their political ideology, like forcing it on somebody,
Yeah.
but using money for it. And I get that.
Like
That
I
makes
like
sense.
okay. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's going on during Social Justice Week, but I was walking to class and they just had a stage and they had a guy talking. If we have time, I can talk about what he talked about. But
Major
basic-
synopsis, just a little bit.
basically he was talking about farmers' rights in Canada, and he was very passionate. And basically, he wasn't forcing anything on anyone. Like, listen if you want, listen if you don't. If there are people surrounding him with flyers and pushing them and asking, you know, what do you think about this? Then I'd be kind of annoyed. But if you've got a stage, you've got a mic, you know, the world's your stage, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or the SLC
I
lobby.
support that, or the SLC lobby. you know, sorry, excuse me. That's fine with me, basically. Like, if you want to listen, listen. If you don't, you don't. You can just kind of walk through. Again, I don't think in a lot of different things. Let's say there was a speech going on about, let's say Black Lives Matter, for example. If there was a speech going on about Black Lives Matter, I feel that the liberal would be more aggressive than the conservative in that situation if you were to pass on, on listening. Or if you were to
Why
pass
aren't you
through,
listening? Don't you care about
if you were to
something
pass
like
through and roll your
And
eyes,
it's really
or anything kind of very kind of, you know, subtle. If you were to kind of, you know, scoff or anything, you'd get you know, looked at weird and whatnot.
and
I definitely agree with that.
so following up on Black Lives Matter, we're gonna have an entire episode to it later on in the season.
Really exciting.
But a question
gonna be
that
interesting.
I did write down. Where is it? Oh, here it is. So a major SJW issue is anti-black racism. Now, the regressive left would call us racist for talking about this because none of us are black, but it doesn't take someone of a specific culture to discuss another culture. And I say discuss, not decide for, just to clarify. So this panel that was made up for this anti-black racism was made up of only black people. So of course racism exists in our society, but do you guys think it's systemic racism or on a personal case-by-case basis? And what do you think of that panel? And how does Black Lives Matter play into all of this? So let's just start with the first one. Is it systemic or personal?
You know, it depends on what you mean by systemic.
Is it systemic as in, you know,
that's
government
embedded
and the
into our
whole society?
society.
Yeah, it's embedded into our society. The government is doing it. Government is responsible.
In all forms of anything that trickles down
No,
from the government.
I don't
Trickle
think
down economics.
I don't think there's state-sponsored racism.
Yeah, there we go.
Is there institutional racism? Sometimes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, because that really comes down to personal. Institutions are made up of people. If you know, an institution happens to be made up of racist people, you may very well end up with a racist institution.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have problems with racism in our society? Is it embedded in our society in some ways? Sure. Unfortunately, we do have a racist history to our country, just as any other country does. And there are leftovers from that. It's not a massive, pervasive thing in every single person of color's life, but it does affect people, and it's certainly something that should be addressed. I think a lot of people are addressing it in the wrong way, and just going about it completely wrong.
What is important to note, I just want to mention, in the U.S., there was back in the day, there was a lot of, a majority of white people that had black slaves. But surprisingly, in Canada, it was mostly the natives that had slaves.
Okay.
So it's true, yeah. I read about it. I forgot the source, but I was...
You got to cite it, man. Always got to cite
I
it.
really don't believe that. But
It's because I mean...
Well, do you say like black slaves in the same way that...
I didn't get to that part, but I did, skim over
Did you say
something.
slaves in general?
That they did have slaves, yeah.
Okay, but,
Native Americans had more slaves than white people did, in Canada at least.
Okay.
in Canada,
Yeah.
slavery was outlawed in Canada in 1820 by the British Crown.
But before then.
Okay.
I do know that there was slavery practiced in some tribes to a degree, maybe not in the exact same way, but something that you absolutely could describe as slavery.
I feel like in terms
Yeah.
of slavery like that with like native, because you said it was slavery between native tribes. Like, there were native tribes had owned slaves.
Yes.
So I believe so. Then there is a possibility that between tribes that like maybe not necessarily civil war, but between any conflicts and stuff like that, any prisoners of war, they would use them as slaves. I understand that, and that makes sense. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just thinking that I'm just assuming. But slavery is like people think as if slavery is like this big issue that's like only like we've only seen like the aftermath of it from like American slavery. Like slavery has been a part of like human history.
Everybody, yeah.
Like Egyptians had like slavery over the Israelites. There was black people from Africa.
That's important to note because America was not the first to have slaves.
Yeah, black people were like people saying like the diaspora from like African people like from crossing the Atlantic Ocean to the United States. Like they didn't only go to the U.S. They went all around to the Caribbean. They went to Latin America. They went to South America. There's the largest population of slaves back in like I believe the 1600 and 1700, like the 17th and 18th century, I believe. the largest population of slaves, and they were all black, was in Brazil.
Yeah.
And they used them to mine all these like raw materials for all the
And then, I mean, you look
colonists.
at Guyana. Guyana is almost 50% descended from African slaves.
Exactly. But that's something that's not just like an American problem.
Yeah.
That's a human problem.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
that's a global problem right there.
Yeah.
Like slavery's existed like everywhere in Asia as well
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. Like, it's ridiculous.
No, even there are countries today that have slaves. Mauritius has slaves in Africa.
You could even like slave is just a general term as well. Like
Yeah.
an example, like these like labor slavery is happening like in
sure.
Qatar for the construction
I was
of all
about to
these
say
different
Qatar, yeah.
all these different buildings for the World Cup, which is complete utter BS. Like,
Child labor in
Exactly.
the Congo, mining for cobalt,
Yeah.
which is what is in the screens of our phones.
Exactly.
You know, I don't know if you guys read it in school, The Carpet.
By who? Is it a book? Is it a
Iqbal
show?
Masih.
I'll look it up.
was
though.
the Carpet Boy. I forget the actual name of the book, but it was about.
Oh, I read that
yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
that
yeah.
was I remember
and
that
it was
from like
about
grade 4
basically
or 5.
you send
Doesn't ring a bell.
basically you sell your kid to a factory owner, and you sell them on a bond to get a loan, and the kid works in the factory until you pay off the loan, but basically you never pay off the loan. It's almost like a catch-22. So even that can be considered slavery.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry. What was the
We're going
question
back to
again?
Black
So,
Lives Matter,
so we started
right?
with systemic or personal
Oh, yeah, yes,
basis.
yes.
Then it was, what do you think of the fact that the panel is only black people? There
That's
was
fine.
no.
I think
I
our
don't
discussion
care.
right
Yeah.
now, like we've
I mean-
generally accepted it's systemic, right?
Again,
we understand.
Well,
I think
systemic.
that-
I mean, government sponsored, state sponsored.
I'm saying,
that's
like,
what I
like-
mean by systemic.
Okay. So
Like
then-
obviously, there's racism in society. There's no denying that. And I don't know if there's a way to actually stop it because everybody is prejudiced by nature.
yeah.
But it's not a government sponsored thing. There are no laws that are racist in nature. So I think it's just personal basis, and it starts with individual people.
Yeah.
But in terms
So
of all
that's-
that legislation, it's an interpretation from the society itself. So from all these, like, you could say, maybe you could say, like, 200, 300 years ago that all white people were racist. You could say, make that argument, and that's why people were...
That's being made now is the
like
issue.
the oppression and stuff like that. But to say that, like, now in today's society, like, hey, okay, this is 2016. We're not living in 1920s, 1930 Alabama where like black people are getting lynched and like ridiculous, and the KKK is like
chained.
ridiculous, and like all this stuff's going on. Like I understand all the atrocities that are happening right now, like against black people, like with the police forces. Like that's a very serious issue. But
which will be discussed on a separate episode.
it's
but-
not the same.
Yeah, no,
Same
absolutely.
thing that happened hundreds of years ago.
Definitely better. Like you cannot
Yeah.
make the argument that it's either the same or worse. It's
Or it's-
definitely
yeah,
better.
exactly.
Yeah, no. People, some
But
people
there-
will say it's the same.
It's-
Some people
yeah.
say it's worse.
and
Yeah,
it's
so-
just
so-
There is
not true.
There is. I don't know. The thing is, calling it systemic is a very broad term.
It
There's
is.
no law in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Yeah, exactly. So by systemic, I mean state-sponsored. That's what I
Yeah.
mean by systemic.
I think
Let's
that
just
there is
clarify
a
that.
lot of inherent racism left over from vague laws written in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, up until, like, what was it, 72. An indigenous man could not be found drunk off reserve. I think that's systemic
It's discrimination
racism.
against
Yeah.
a class of people. Yeah.
And I know that 72 was almost was about 45 years ago, but again, like this is all fresh and new. There, like you can look at Parliament, and Parliament is still made up of old white cis men. This is how it is, and there's a lot of ignorance
But
and a lot of disattachment or disassociation with minority groups. In Native groups, African American groups, Asian Canadian groups, or African Canadian groups, Asian Canadian groups, all these different groups, and we don't know how to sort of come about issues concerning them.
The point is, though, when you said that government is made up of these men, it is true. However, we're getting to a point where there's equal opportunity, and that starts with personal situations. For example, this very show, I've been wanting to say this for a long time. Our entire panel is made up of men. However, I gave the opportunity to everybody, and only men answered me. There was one girl that did answer me, but she had to back out just because she couldn't come at the time, and that's totally okay. But the point is, we're getting to a point where there is equal opportunity, and the thing is, when somebody doesn't get a job and it has nothing to do with racism or sexism, it's wrong to assume that it's because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes it is because
Yeah,
of that,
of
but it's
course.
absolutely wrong
Yeah.
to assume that it is. Now,
Get the facts first.
again, on the all-black panel for the Black Lives Matter thing, I don't know the other two people on the panel. I know one of them, not
Do you remember what the
personally.
name of the panel is?
It was.
Or when is it?
just an-
It's just today. Go look up Ryerson Social Justice Week.
Cool. Thanks.
It's all. I think it's. Is it all women on the panel? I'm
No,
not
it was-
sure.
That's a separate panel. That's all women.
It was. Yeah, that's the.
Okay,
that's
so-
the feminism
yeah,
panel.
so,
it was men and women, but they were all. Yeah.
Okay, so it was made up of all black people, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me. Just like how you can have all white people talking about racism, you can have. It doesn't matter who. I think the point was for them to talk about it from a personal perspective, and I don't care about that. I do have issues with who specifically came.
You know them?
Sandy Hudson. I don't know if you've heard of Sandy Hudson.
Sounds familiar.
Is she
the
one
woman,
of the?
the woman who embezzled $277,000 from U of T.
Is she one of the co-founders of BLM?
Yeah, one of the co-founders
my-
of Black Lives Matter. Yeah,
Yeah.
embezzled $277,000.
Yeah,
from
I heard
U of
about
T.
that.
I think last year when I went to the Jack Layton Leadership School, she was there at one of the panels. It was her, another lady who is of Native American origin, Aboriginal origin. I think another black dude, and then some. I think like a lady of Middle Eastern descent and stuff like
Okay.
that. So like in terms of that panel, it was somewhat diverse. It was cool, but there's always problems with that when in terms like it's only like of one particular thing. They're just going to keep saying the exact same thing. They're just going to repeat each other. Four different people saying the same thing.
And what I've noticed with Ryerson, and I don't mean to,
Generalize.
be a cuck, but in all honesty, so far we went to a panel on Bill C-51.
Yeah.
All three panelists and the moderator were against it. This panel, all of the people were for one subject. The wage gap panel that I wanted to discuss, all of them were women. So there's no intellectual diversity on these panels.
Well, yeah, and
It's just the same, of course,
You're
different
right.
people, there's diversity.
I think people just want to
Somewhat-
avoid
No,
But
conflict
they don't.
too, right?
They don't all give the same opinion.
Well-
They're all against it, but they don't. They have different reasons why they are against
but it's the
it.
general opinion. There's no actual disagreement or anything. There's no debate. It's kind of like, well, here's my reason for it, and here's my reason for it, and that's
yeah, but
why
it's
we
not a
align.
debate. It's a panel.
Yeah,
it's
no,
an
you-
information
well-
session.
Fair, but I
Yeah.
still think that there should be some sort of intellectual diversity, and there should be an exchanging of opinions. For like this show, we all have different political views, but we're here talking about different subjects.
Yeah, and I hate Marshall.
Yeah, I hate you guys. Low-key.
I hate everybody.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really nice. Anyway, yeah. So that's it. That's just my personal view.
yeah, no, and I mean you aren't wrong. I personally, it doesn't bother me per se. I mean the Bill C-51 issue. I mean it was a pretty homogenous group. Like it was just, for the most part, people were repeating each other, rephrasing
Yeah,
each
there
other's
was, there was a lot.
And it's
Yeah,
fine if they all have the same
repetition.
opinion. It's fine if they all like generally agree. I would like to see them all bring something to the table at least. And I mean, we haven't gone to these. I don't know if you have, but I haven't at least gone to these. I'm not sure if I've missed the Black Lives Matter one. I'm not sure if that's later. If
I'm
Yeah,
looking into it right
happened.
now, actually.
But I would like to go to that.
just
So
to check it out.
Yeah, I can't speak for whether there is diversity on that opinion-wise, and I don't really care too much if there is. It doesn't bother me too much because that's not really the point of it. The point of it is for them to get information out. Although it would be nice to see diversity, it doesn't bother me that there's not, but it would be nice to see.
Look, there are, like, from what I know about Black Lives Matter, there is a lot of, basically, there are a lot of other groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, Indigenous Coalition, all these other groups that they claim solidarity with Black Lives Matter. And
It's just
and it's the sort of alliance of all these minority oppressed groups, and I stand with them, I support them and whatnot. But it's very easy for us to sit here and bash on Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, but we're all straight white men. It's very easy to kind of to sit here and criticize, but we don't know. This is 300 years of frustration brewing in and boiling up to a group and an association. And of course there are going to be issues. Of course there are going to be crooked people. Of course there are going to be problems. But we're very easy to kind of point and go, when one of them is ones that embezzle money. There is embezzlement. A former member of the Liberal Party was found on embezzlement. And there's embezzlement everywhere. But we're very easy to say, see, this is the problem with Black Lives Matter. because we're not black, simply put, and that's my, like, I have critiques of Black Lives Matter. I even have critiques of Students for Justice in Palestine, but I'm gonna
And that's
not at Ryerson per se, but this sort of association of Students for Justice in Palestine.
I want to point out to that. It's true. They've suffered years of oppression, and there's no denying it. And even in schools, they're only portrayed as slaves. They don't talk about, they barely talk about Martin Luther King Jr., for example, who was trying to change things. But the point I want to make is that, for example, the Jews were killed in the Holocaust, and it was Germany that was responsible for it, Hitler. But at this point, you can't go and say all Germans are Nazis.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And that's the same thing with saying all white people are racist.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. At the time, it's a different situation, but now it's different.
It's funny that you mentioned Germany and stuff like that, because even though the whole Holocaust happened there, right, in Germany, and it's ridiculous of all those people that died, but at least Germany acknowledged what happened.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have tons of memorials for the Holocaust,
and they've been paying millions in reparations.
Yeah,
millions.
exactly, and that does not happen here, in Western society. Western's a broad term. What I'm talking about is North American society with that. Only up until now, where we have this apology towards Aboriginal people for residential schools. That doesn't do anything. Reparations is I don't know, maybe, but that's not what I'm arguing right now. What I'm arguing is that we have no level of accountability for any type of those actions that happen throughout our history in the same way. At least Germany, even the simple having construction of those memorials and stuff like that for the Holocaust, for all those Jews that have died, all the citizens itself, not even just Jewish people. That's very important, and we don't have that here in Canada and the U.S., and that's a very, very changing thing. And I think another point, if we see Black Lives Matter and the way that they operate, and some things are good, some things are bad, but that's with every organization.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin Luther King, he advocated for peace and everything, and before Malcolm X was very violent and a black supremacist, even after when he converted, he still was all peaceful. And I feel I'm not saying obviously they're dead, but I feel if they were to see what's going on with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, the violent approach
they wouldn't
is not what they
necessarily
would
be happy.
necessarily
MLK's
agree
descendants,
with.
his niece, his
Even
kid,
they don't agree
They
with
don't
him?
like it.
And-
MLK the third, he does not like Black Lives Matter. MLK's niece, she really doesn't like it. And
It goes against
See,
to what
and-
MLK
what he
and
was
Malcolm
trying-
X were fighting for.
And I didn't even know this, and it's funny because
Yeah, that's new
they're
knowledge to me
immediately
too.
shut out of the narrative.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Malik Obama, Obama's half brothers voting for Donald Trump,
Yeah.
immediately shut out of the narrative.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's hilarious on Twitter. I recommend checking
Yeah,
out his
he
tweets.
is.
I thought you were talking about Sasha. Never mind. I thought you were talking about the daughters.
Imagine that. But
I think
yeah,
it's
and
Malia.
really, I find
Can they vote?
yeah,
Are they old enough?
Daughters?
Malia can.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder who she's voting for.
And yeah, it really, I mean, the narrative does just kind of is pushed by the media to kind of suit the agenda of these groups. Personally, I don't like Black Lives Matter. I think that there's other better black advocacy groups out there because there are problems that are facing the black community. I personally just think Black Lives Matter has made a mess of it. I think they've done much more harm than good. I think in essence, they have very good intentions. I think in Toronto, the founders, the three founders, especially Yusra Kogali and Sandy Hudson, are both very, very.
What's the first girl's name?
Yusra Kogali.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she she's I don't know if you
The
you've
glitter-
guys seen
the glitter
the glitter.
symbol?
So
Yeah.
Lauren Southern,
the
who
Rebel
I think
Media.
the Rebel Media went to U of T and came to the free speech protest, and Ursula was basically saying oh F off.
Yeah.
Did you say you wanna F me? And she's like, no, I just asked for your opinion. And also she was throwing glitter at her, and it's all caught on footage.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up. But
Does that count as assault?
Well, no, I mean it's not. It's
Does
just
that count?
annoying.
not really. It's just annoying.
I
but
know
but
it doesn't. I'm just saying. Imagine somebody could argue that.
The thing is that they have good I'd say intentions. I understand where they're coming from, but just some of the stuff that's even on their website is factually untrue. I've done the
Yeah,
research
yeah, yeah.
myself.
Could you give an example?
For
Just
example, on the
audience?
website, it says 2.8 million black people are incarcerated in jails a year. factually untrue. FBI and Bureau of Justice statistics show that 2.2 million people altogether, not just black people, are in jail.
So they're
that's
just assuming that all black people are in jail.
Yeah, and that they're still assuming even more black people than there are people, right? And of course, people get convicted wrongly, both black and white people. But when you start putting, exaggerating and hyperbolizing stuff on your website, that just doesn't help you.
Yeah, no,
if you want to
It
put
loses your
if you want to
credibility.
put the real facts there, go ahead. That's why I wanted to fact check it, because I looked at the website and I was like, okay, this sounds
Fact
terrible.
checking,
I want to
fact
see if there's a way we can do something. So I looked it up, right? And we're going to have, again, a separate episode on Black Lives Matter, but that's just one thing I wanted to mention. Like, some of the stuff is... there you go. We got Trump
Bad
over
hombres.
here. So it's just, if you want to be a good organization, just use the correct facts and promote your message peacefully but with assertion, and you're good.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? Or?
Got
Well,
4
we got
minutes.
about 4 minutes, so I'm just going to wrap it up really quickly. In 5 days,
Oh no.
the U.S. election.
Oh,
Hold
no.
on, just for 1 second, can we talk about other history in the making with the Chicago Cubs for a second?
True, yeah, we
That's-
might as well.
That's just global history
Chicago
right there.
Cubs,
That's
100
probably the most important thing in history right
108
now.
years since they won
That's
the World
crazy,
Series. I hate
man.
baseball. I still hate baseball.
I
but this
like
is pretty
baseball.
cool.
That's cool.
I didn't even watch it. I just saw, my friend
It's all
just,
about Snapchat, man.
just post.
Watching it go on there.
I'm happy Bill Murray is happy. That's all.
Yeah.
We just have to talk about
Well,
that.
if
But
Bill
what were you
Murray's
saying?
happy, then there's nothing else you
exactly.
What else did you want to talk about though?
need. I just wanted to mention the U.S. elections. They're coming up in 5 days. It's terribly close. We, the Raben Report, might be doing something special for the elections.
Might.
In addition to, because we haven't exactly planned it out yet, but it's in the making. But we are having our election episode, our post-election episode next week. Do you guys have any last words? Just
About the
really quickly
election?
about the election.
Yeah, well, you know what? Like in the last week, it's gotten wild. It's gone. The whole thing's been turned on its head. Donna Brazile being found out that she, I'm gonna say allegedly, but I mean at this point
It's pretty much confirmed.
yeah, but allegedly was providing Hillary Clinton with the debate questions prior to the debate. And now Trump, for the first time, is above Hillary since
Really?
February. Yeah. And only
No,
1 point.
He's been above her for brief periods, by
Okay.
like 0.2 or something. But I'm not gonna get you on that technicality.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
something. It's the first time something has
Yeah.
happened in the poll since February. That
Yeah,
might not
yeah.
have been what it was. It might have been the first time Hillary's dropped,
yeah.
as opposed to Trump going up.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. Look, everywhere you see on Twitter, you see it everywhere. Trump's got a narrow path to 270, narrow path to 270, narrow path to 270. But he's got a path.
Yeah.
Regardless whether you like to hear it or not, he's got a path. I mentioned it in the last show or the show before that. A week before the election against Carter and Reagan in 1980, they had Carter at 5 points above Reagan. Reagan won in a landslide, and they called the election even before the polls in California closed. This is Hillary. I hate to quote Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton in one of her speeches said, "This is going to be a close election. Pay attention to no polls."
Yeah.
It's the only part that was
I feel
true.
like
Yeah,
you can use
yeah.
polls just as a way to
Yeah.
make more people vote for a
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
candidate.
This
It's like, if they're
is-
if somebody's gonna win,
Yeah.
might as well vote for them because I know
This
they're gonna win.
is going to be
So-
a close election.
We have to go. But again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to
I'm
thank
just scared for the result, no matter what.
Yeah.
I want to thank the panelists. As usual, Marshall, Daniel, and Adam. Thank
Pleasure
you for
for
being
having
here.
Thanks for
Pleasure.
having us.
And we'll see you next week, and maybe even before then. Thanks for tuning in.
Take it easy.